what your institution has talked about in some of the breakout rooms. So I'm going to ask you to, in the chat, I want to make sure that I know who's in the room, what's going on with you. So please introduce yourself, name, institution, maybe your role if you feel like it, and very short. I'm not asking to be, Ernest Hemingway or William Faulkner here for your history, but I'd be interested in knowing, like, how did you pick your major in college? So very briefly, like, how did that happen? I know for me, it's been a long time, and I may not, a little bit old memory here, but be curious to see. So, and I will call on some people. So just want to make sure that be prepared. I know it's 9 a.m. I don't know who selected a workshop at 9 a.m. Some people, right? I'll blame it on Lily. So anyway, funny, Laurie. I presume Laurie is an historian. If not, then that's even better.
Psychology.
Oh, okay. I thought, like, the rest is history. I was like, oh, that was funny. That was good. Nice. Very nice. Okay, good. So keep it coming. Keep it coming. I'll start talking, but please don't stop. I think it's important to, in some cases, especially today, to kind of rethink about, like, what was it like to be a student? Well, I mean, the first time in college, what was it like? Like, how? I know I was scared. I actually even forgot my alphabet. One of my classes, psychology class, was overbooked, and they said, last name from A through M, stay here, and then O through Z, come back tomorrow for, we'll find another room or something like that. And I just left. My last name is H, so I should have stayed. That's how nervous I was my first day of college. So you can imagine that obviously a lot of students are very similar to this here. So Lily, okay, Lily, do you mind unmuting yourself? I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you picked that major.
Well, I can't say I was very plugged into my career center, but I didn't have a typical college experience. I took a semester off, and then when I came back as a senior, I was technically a senior. I was like, how can I finish the fastest? And my faculty that I'd had a few classes with said, well, if you chose to major in sociology, we could get you out of here. And I only had to take like one extra class after that spring semester. So I said, deal. But I was passionate about it anyway. So I happened to have a lot of sociology classes that I had randomly taken. And so it was like the stars aligned and somebody else knew what I was supposed to be doing, but I didn't.
Nice. And it seems that sociology is the easy go-to. And if there are a lot of sociologists in the room, I apologize, but I've seen that at my institution as well, that sociology seems to be the first thing that comes, like, how about sociology? And the issue is that I think a lot of times students don't even know what sociology is unless, until they actually take a sociology class. So very, very interesting in this. So we'll come back to some of those things. So let's get started. So purpose first. I mean, when we're talking about purpose at CCA, if you've been to our website, you see that we have different pillars, and the purpose pillars, we have different strategies under each. And these are the 4 strategies that fall under the purpose pillar. One thing that I want to make sure that I'm not really going to talk about the adult learner engagement today. Although one thing I would say is that adults should also go through pretty much the same process, or maybe in some cases a little bit different. But but in terms of communication and in terms of information that we provide. But I don't think that we should discount, adults returning to think that they somehow know all that is going on, all the programs that you actually are offering, that the different careers are associated, about the labor or the latest labor market data and things like that. So I think we shouldn't discount adults like, oh, well, you're 35, you're coming back. You obviously, what you want to do. They may know what they've been doing and maybe they're interested in pursuing something in their chosen field, but let's make sure that we also provide them information with something that's also related to their field. They may see that actually that is something that an avenue that may actually have more job stability or more opportunities for growth and higher salary and things like that. So today I'm really going to focus on the first three. And one thing that I want to make sure I remind you, so in 2 weeks, we're going to have another webinar, another workshop. And this time we're going to really focus on the admissions and the new student orientation. So how do we actually can integrate career discussion and major selection in these different processes? Because the thing that, it should be done often, it should be done continuously, and in some cases by different perspectives and different folks, so that students get different information and start thinking about, what's the best way for them to select a major and what major is a little bit more relevant for them. So going back to your point and to your question, so how do students choose their majors? And I think a lot of you, I see what I'm based on your answer. First one, mom and dad. I used to be at every single orientation, and the first question I asked, well, why did you pick that major? Like, well, my dad wants me to be, an engineer, or my mom wants me to be a lawyer, or something like that. But what do you want? So I think a lot of things students are coming in, especially students coming from high school, they're getting from what's at home, what's being told that these are pretty good careers. And obviously, like when we're talking about the professional careers, like, law, medical, engineering, things like that, that comes easy. And also it's something that you tend to see, in popular culture, in high school and things like that. You kind of know what they are. So it's easy to, go back to it. And it tends to have like good financial sense. A lot of things is, it looks cool. And that I didn't get as much from your comments. But I'd be very curious to see after CSI came on, and maybe I'm definitely dating myself here, but when CSI came on, it was a big thing, So I'd be very interested to see like how many students actually pick criminal justice after, as their majors when CSI came on. And the problem is that, yeah, that sounds cool. The show is like, oh, that's awesome. But the thing is that what really interested them or what they thought was cool was not the criminal justice part. That for them, that was probably the boring part. It was more about the forensic, the science and things like that. But students wouldn't know. I mean, all they saw was like, oh yeah, criminal justice. That seems something that is actually relevant to what I was talking about. So they make choices that sounds cool, but without necessarily having a full picture. And finally, another thing, and I've seen a few in here, like friends, well, what are you majoring? Oh, I want to go with you. I want to take the same classes, things like that. So they end up in, a similar field as their friends here. Again, the issue here is that this is not based on what do I want? What are my goals? What is the information that actually can help me make, and guide me to make an informed decision around these particular majors and programs and what careers are actually going to lead. And that's another thing that we need to talk a little bit more, that a lot of students equate major and career, and somehow there is one-to-one, that if you major in English, somehow the only way, the only career is going to be, you're going to be an English teacher. That is it. That is a one-to-one. When we really need to talk about, a major does not define a career, unless you're really talking in some cases nursing. Well, that's a little different. But for a lot of other majors, like what are the other avenues? So do you know, have you talked to your career services about like, where do you students end up in those different careers, based on the majors that they have, they've pursued and graduate at your institution? And again, this issue here that, that we saw, so Strata Gallup, Strata did a survey a couple of years ago, and they looked at students who graduated and those who had some college and no degree. And they asked them, like, if you're to redo your entire college experience, what would you do differently? And over a third of them chose, like, I would pick a different major. And now that could be because, like, you know, they realized that after they started working, like, that is not really what I thought it was going to be. There are no jobs. I'm underemployed. Whatever. But it could also be that students who did not graduate based on these majors and realized that, you know, the way it made them feel about not understanding what was going on and what the major, and like, if I don't know why am I in college, like, if I don't pick this major, I don't know what's going on. So that is an issue. You know, I think that the fact that you have like over a third of your students who probably like, I wish I'd pick a different major, that's after they had graduated, in some cases after they dropped out. That's something that we need to really address, and making sure that students who make a decision, make an informed decision about their major, so that the choices, and they don't regret, you know, their college experience in this. And Stephen, I like that the 75% of lawyers were not going to law practice again. I can imagine. Nothing against lawyers; they're really nice people. But I had 4 law students, roommates, when I went to Georgia State, and that is something else. So here's what I like to do. Let me launch a poll, and I'd be curious to see, how many times did you change majors in your undergraduate college career? Okay, I see some. There's a lot of, you know, folks who were very sure. By like, you know, 5 more seconds. So I guess I have a room full of people who were very well informed about their majors, and who were like, I got this, you know, like, I never changed major. Like, a third of you were like, nope, came in, you know, went through, graduated, all done. Few of them, you know, also a third only changed once. Hopefully it was early, because that's another thing that we see. I think a lot of students are changing majors, but late in the game. And that obviously, you know, means like a lot of time and a lot of money that students are wasting in this. 2-3 times, not bad. About a quarter of you changed by like 2 or 3 times, and only 5% changed like, you know, 4 or 5 times. That's impressive. Mostly because, well, let me tell you this. For me, first generation, low socioeconomic, you know, single parent household, I was really interested in science. I mean, like, science is, you know, I'm still very much interested in science, and I wanted to work with people. So of course, first thought that people would say is like, well, you should be a doctor. And if you don't get the reference of Doctor Who, we may need to have a separate workshop about like great British television and pop culture, but that's something else. So it is David Tennant as Doctor Who in this thing. So obviously I started my college career as biochemistry. The issue here is that I did not do so well in organic chemistry too. And that I was very lucky to have a family friend who was biochemist, and she's like, well, this is let me tell you what I do all day. I'm in a lab, hunch over a microscope, and I basically use a pipette. I go one sample, and I do this. And I do this every day, and then I analyze the result. Then the next day, I do the same thing, but with a little something different. And that's all I do, like all day long. And I was like, that sounds incredibly boring. That is not what I want to do. So luckily, again, based on that information, I changed my major. Also because organic chemistry too, but also mostly, you know, because that sounded boring to me. So like many of you students, I ended up in psychology because, again, I want to help people. You know, like I want to learn, like, you know, what people are, you know, what interests them, what takes them off, and things like that. And I really like Piaget. That I think was really interesting. But Freud and a lot of other theories, I was just like, that is not something that I'm particularly interested in. Then I moved to political science. I'm Canadian, by the way, hence, so I'm trying to not to divide anymore this country. So I use, a foreign leader. So I decided for political science. That did not last long because politics to me were not exactly the most interesting aspect. I changed to history. I had a faculty member who was a great Russian historian, and his classes were awesome. I did fall asleep a couple times in there, but doesn't matter. It was really cool. The only thing is that I did not see myself as an historian. Nothing against historian, but I was like, that really doesn't deal with people. It has really nothing to do with science and things like that. So, and this pretty much happened in about 2 or 3 semesters here. Luckily, my mom, came to me and was like, well, you seem to be struggling a little bit. How about occupational therapists? Like, you've been teaching, you kind of like this, you'd be dealing with people and things like that. Did a bit of research, that'd be awesome. The only problem is that I'm at the University of Montreal, which is a French-speaking university, and the only occupational therapist program is at McGill, which is English-speaking. So I was like, I need to improve my English here before going, taking classes at college in English. So I started taking English. And without advising, I started taking post-colonial literature and African-American literature, because as one does, when you need to improve English, you always go with post-colonial, literature. The thing is that I fell in love with English. I really just like, this is it. Like, English to me, brings in history, psychology, political science. I mean, like, everything brings it up. To me, that was like a nice, perfect storm. Like, this is it. I found my passion. I found my why. And that's something that I was very lucky. A lot of my friends did not do that. They were swirling as well. They did not necessarily have the support, either financial or, familial support to guide them or to find different information related to their careers. And they just dropped out. So I know that, like, out of like a circle of 5 friends, 2 of them dropped out. Very smart. I mean, like, extremely smart people, but because they did not find their why, I'm just wasting my time. I'm wasting my money by coming to college. Might as well just go to get a job instead of just, doing all this like that. So again, very funny, fortunate for this. So what I like to do here is I like to break you out in groups by your institution. And I would like to, for you to spend, I say 10 minutes, but maybe like, 8, 9 minutes or so, to talk about what information do you think that your students need to make informed decisions about their degrees and careers. And I would ask, for you to maybe go one step further in your discussion, which is, how do you know? Have you talked to students, or are you talking currently to students about this? So let's do breakouts. At the bottom of your screen, or the top down the bar, you should be able to see breakout rooms. And Melanie, I don't know if you're able to send them to the room. I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you came out, what we came up with. So feel free to unmute yourself and or put it in the chat. So what information do you think that students need to make informed decisions around their degrees and their careers? So what came out in your discussions here?
I'll jump in from the Midway crew. Time, experience, and the opportunity to get to know self through different assessments and pieces like that.
I got Kathy, I like that the permission and opportunity to explore options and interests. Absolutely. I mean, I think this is about them. right? So we want to make sure that we give them that permission. We give them the opportunity to like, hey, let's talk about this. This is about your decision. Absolutely. So a lot of like opportunities to explore themselves, their interests, their values, what works for them. Absolutely.
And Nicholas, our group spent a lot of time talking about the question of what do we mean by the right major? What counts as the right major? And I think we came to the point that the right major is the one that's going to allow the student to remain engaged throughout their education and to graduate. So.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, I think that there, humanities and the arts, I think a lot of folks are like, oh, what are you going to do? And that, and what kind of jobs and things like that. But if that's something that you're passionate about, if you are engaged, you're much more likely to actually stay, like you said, engaged and passionate, and you're more likely to actually be retained and pursue and graduate with that degree, as opposed to like, well, I guess I need to go in business because that's where the money is. If you're not interested in business, that is simply not going to be a good solution for you in that regard. So thank you for sharing all on this this bit here. So one thing that I want to mention, if you don't know, and we'll talk about Academic Maps later on, I am a fan of Academic Maps. I'm the #1 fan. I started the fan club. I'm the president, the CEO, and the treasurer. I love them. The issue that we're facing is that it's not enough. I think that we kind of need to know, like Academic Maps are great, but we kind of want to make sure that how, when, where you want to go in the first place. So we use the image of GPS is great to know like how you're gonna get there. But first of all, you need to know where you are right now and where you want to go. And then basically the institution can actually show you the way to get to where you need to go. So purpose matters. And I think that just like, what you guys, were talking about is like students thrive when their why is there. Like, why am I actually in college? Why am I actually taking these classes? Why am I actually, pursuing this particular major? Once you actually know, you're much more likely to actually be, to remain connected and engage with the college experience and actually look for different experiences that complement, your experience towards the degree. So for me, I think that the main thing that is going to be consistent throughout, not just this workshop, but throughout every time we work with you is about actively engaging with the student, not being a passive observer, not saying like, well, we have a great website. It's right there. Surely students know, how to navigate a website. Like, yeah, they know about websites, but do they know how to get to where your information is stored? And what do they do with that information? How are you actually engaging the student with the information that you provided them? So it cannot be a passive activity. You need to basically bring the student to it and then actively engage and have conversations and activities and assignments to actually have, the students start reflecting on why this is a good fit, why this is the right major for me, and what am I going to do, and what are the potential avenues for me once I graduate. And the issue I think, we talk about is like the uninformed decisions leads to like, constant major changes. I think if you are an academic advisor or student affairs or a registrar, you see it, like when I had the poll where it says like, a major every week, that was a joke, but not really. We do see students that like every single semester, they're going to change majors because they took a class that was like, oh, that's so cool. Okay. And you don't know, much about it other than that one class. And then the next semester is like, I don't know how I feel about it. So making sure that we talk about their why, and create the purpose so that students don't swirl and keep changing majors all the time. The imbalanced representation. I mean, that's something that we need to talk a little bit more about. What do students know coming in, and how do we make sure that all the information is provided to them in an equitable manner so that the students who have the means to do that research, to have the connections, to know about the different majors and different careers that are open to them, that that information is being shared equally. The one thing that we see, and that's something that I'm going to start asking you to start pulling that data. Do you know the demographics of your majors? Is it equitable across your institution? Why? And how do you, how do you help students make a different, an information towards one major as opposed to another? And what we see, and I'm not going to say necessarily that it's malicious, but we do see a lot of times the conversation with students is we, steer students towards one major rather than another based on race, based on zip code, based on which high school you attend to, because I mean well. Now this one is too hard. It's really hard. How about if you go with that one here? And the issue again is that when we're talking about social mobility, when we're talking about opportunities for growth, financial security, and things like that, we're not doing the students a service, providing them a service. If anything, we're doing a disservice to the students. So how do we provide the information, help them make an informed decision rather than steering them away from it? And I'm not saying that necessarily you're doing it, but we see a lot of it. So let's start thinking about how we actually help and support the student making that information, and who's talking to the students, what is being said to the students, and in some cases it can be just as simple as, instead of saying, what's your major, start the question about, what are you interested in? So just start the conversation of, let's talk about it, instead of actually, having a one-word answer from a student, and that's the end of it for this case. You do know, the perception of value in college. I was talking to different institutions yesterday, and I have this graphic about how a lot of folks are now seeing that college is not necessarily necessary, even though more and more jobs are actually looking for college degrees. So the perception is changing about higher education. How are we actually making the case that, yes, a college degree is of great value, that it is worth, investing in yourself in this case, and support you, for your growth in the near future. There are a lot more for-profit, and I'm not, knocking for-profit organizations like, University of Phoenix and things like that. The graduation rate of for-profit is not particularly great, though. They have great commercials and all that stuff, but the results does not necessarily always speak for themselves. And the industry certificates, I think that they've seen a gap in the market, honestly. And I think they look for, how can we best support our workers in this case? Again, there's nothing wrong with the industry certificates. In some cases, though, they can be somewhat limited and limits to, their particular industry. So it's kind of like that certificate does not necessarily translate if that person were to change jobs in this case. And you do know, obviously, that students or folks without a college degree were hit particularly harder during the pandemic. So how do we make sure that the students that we talk to, whether, again, first year, first time in college, or adults who are returning, or first time in college, how we make sure that we talk about the value and support them to make an informed decision. And this is where I think we talk about, the uninformed decisions. A lot of times they're caused by the long list of majors. I mean, I don't know how many of you, I saw in the earlier couple of accounting majors. You'd be surprised, or not, by the number of accounting majors. The reason why is the first one in the dropout list, or the drop down list. Select your major. Out of the 125 majors that we offer our institution, pick one. And that is too much. So we can talk about meta majors a little bit, but one thing is that, why are we expecting students to know all 125 majors, all the majors that are actually offered at your institution? What information are we actually providing to make sure that they don't just pick accounting because it's the first one in the list, or undeclared and just leave it at that, because right now they're just overwhelmed by the number of choices. The same thing, do the majors and careers that they're choosing early on, do they align with their interests and values and their career aspirations as well? If we don't address that, the result is excess credit, loss of time, a lot of dropouts and, the institutional performance gaps that the students simply do not represent where they need to go. And this is something that, these two really, I kind of want to emphasize a little bit more. And it's not always popular to talk about how, the majority of students come to college for a job. We work in higher education. We'd love to think that all students are coming in for greater learning. Like they're hungry, like, they're sponges. They want to learn. That's why they're in my classroom and things like that. They're passionate about English. That's why they're in my class. Like, no, they're in my class because they have to, because it's a college requirement to check a box. That's a problem, but we need to talk about the connection. What are you learning in my English class? How's that actually going to help you in your job, whatever your job is, what you're learning in terms of writing, in terms of critical thinking, in terms of problem solving. Those are things that are skills and competencies that you're learning in my class that actually will help you based on, regardless pretty much of what your major and career is. Are we actually making that case? And that's basically leads to the second point of the almost like 2/3 of the students say they value their education if they understand the relevance. And again, I don't know if you talk to students or even if you don't talk to them, if you're in the elevator with them sometimes and you're like, why do I have to take this biology class? I'm a business major. I don't know if you ever heard that. I heard that like every single day during orientation. Like we would help students pick their major, their registration. And like, why? Like, I'm in English. Why do I have to take this math course? Like, I'm never going to use math. Like, well, let's talk about that. And it's not necessarily just on the advisor or the orientation leader or admission. It has to be also on the faculty member to explain like what you're learning in my class has a connection, and this is what you're learning. This is how it's going to carry you on, outside of my classroom as well. And one thing that, again, I mentioned about the redirecting students towards some majors is that, Black and Latinx students are severely underrepresented in majors that lead to higher paying jobs. So how do we actually address that to make sure that we do have an equitable representation in the majors, not to push everyone in the majors, as as Beth was talking about, what is the right major for them? But let's make sure that they have all the information to make sure that they pick the right major for them, and not just that we pick for them based on their zip code, their race, or anything else like that. So this is what we're talking about. I think it should be clear by now that when we talk about purpose first is supporting students in making, an informed decision by providing them the relevant information. And one thing I want to address what Megan mentioned about the undeclared, the stigma about undeclared. Absolutely, in some cases there is a stigma, as if like surely by now, at 18 years old, you should know what your major is and what your career plan is. I don't know about you, but a lot of you changed majors, and again, a lot of you did not. But look where you are right now. You are in higher education. Let's look at outside the higher education walls. How many of your other students and your peers who do not work at a college or university, how many of them actually changed majors? So let's have that discussion. And it's perfectly fine to have undeclared students. When I was at Georgia State University before coming to CCA, and I worked with learning communities. So we had meta majors, business, social sciences, health sciences, natural sciences. And the more sections that we had to create was for undeclared students. And it's not that, we basically flatted out like, there's no stigma. That's fine. You know what we're going to do though? We're going to help you to, find your major, find your why, find your passion. So in the learning community, in the first year experience course, in your meta major, let's talk about, bringing career assessment. Let's talk about what are you interested in? Let's connect you with like, are you interested in business? Learn more about this. So let's talk about it. But let's not feel them bad, make them feel bad because somehow, they just have a an undeclared, and in some cases that is the first one too on the the checklist, or it's the last one at the bottom. So students just scroll and you're like, I don't undeclared. Yes, that's right. That one fits, right for me in this case here. So bringing the undeclared, and I'll talk about different things also that some institutions are doing to address the undeclared aspect of it. But again, we should not make students feel bad about whatever major they are interested in, whether it's undeclared, accounting, arts, philosophy. Let's talk about that. Is this what you're interested in? Great. We're going to help you make the best of this opportunity. So let's go back and let's do 7 minutes this time, Melanie, please. So I like, again, by breakout at your institution. When and how does the institution introduce careers to students? When does that happen? And do you know? I'm not, again, no stigma if you don't know, but what I'd be interested in, like, let's talk about, at your institution, when does that conversation or that information is first shared with students? Not passively on a website, but actively introduced to the students when you're having that discussion. All right, so let's do a quick breakout here, 7 minutes, Melanie, please. And we will send you to your breakout. A few more folks coming in a second. Excuse me. All right, so I think everybody is back here. So what I like to do, just launch this quick poll, but also feel free to unmute yourself and share a little bit more about what your answer is. So I see folks doing it in recruitment, FYE. I like the not sure. Honestly, I think if you don't know, that's a good reason to start discussing it. It's like, who should know? Who does know at your institution that when is actually, or is it actually even happening at all? Give you a few more seconds here for as you see, a lot of you is during the recruitment. Can someone talk about that? Like, what does it look like from a recruitment side to talk about careers and major? Anyone? Bueller? And click all that apply. Yeah, I purposely did it one time only, and that is good.
I'll be glad to.
Go ahead, Tammy, sorry.
I'm Tammy from Hazard Community and Technical College. I'll be glad to share from a recruitment standpoint. We do start in grade school. We get our elementary schools do a lot of operation preparation, especially around the middle school age. And they've been doing that for years. And we get asked all the time as recruiters to come in and speak about different career options. And they start doing assessments with students, asking them what's their favorite subjects, what kinds of things do they want to be when they, grow up. And they invite people from those different jobs and careers to come in. And we've done all kinds of different ways they've done that. We've even done speed dating. And then we also have a coloring book for our college that has all the different careers and programs that we offer, that we give out a lot of different events to even children, like our Christmas celebration downtown has a giving tree up and down Main Street, and the college does a giving tree every year, and we give out these coloring books so that it's not only in a subtle way even being started with young kids, but then there's also the double thing that you've got their parents that can kind of start considering it too.
discussion. Absolutely. There's I like the early connection. Lee College in Texas held over the last Halloween held a trunk or treat on their campus and invited local schools nearby and obviously their parents. And every trunk was basically a different major, a different program that they offer. And so they had an opportunity to, showcase kind of like, a poster session, if you will, about what the major is and things like that. So that's an easy way of bringing folks to your campus to start having that conversation. Doesn't cost a whole lot of money. It's just like candy. I mean, that's basically the investment that you are providing. So it does, raise the profile of the institution, make sure that students actually see themselves on campus because you're inviting them on campus, and start to have a conversation around well, what's the difference between, accounting and economics, or finance and economics? Like, what is the difference between that? What's sociology? Like, I never heard of that. So let's talk about, I think that the different ways to actually talk about it makes a lot of sense in that aspect of it. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate this. One thing that I kind of want to emphasize, and I think some of the comments that were shared are talking about well, it depends. Sometimes it's even later. And I agree about, not necessarily saying that, once you select a major, this is it. You're locked in. You can't make any changes. It is very early for them to do so. But what I want them to do is that to start the conversation, to actively engage the student. And if a student changes their mind, that's okay. But guess what? Let's provide them with information to make sure that the next major that they selected, also they have the right information about this and what does it mean for them as they keep growing. But earlier is better, because if you wait too long, students go on a path. About the required courses or preferred courses in the gen ed and things like that. You want to make sure that they have at least a good idea. And this is one thing I like about the meta majors, is that it doesn't necessarily pin you down into one specific major, but into a large discipline. And I think that we were talking about the undeclared aspect of it. Usually it's not that they're undeclared, they're like, I have no clue whatsoever. They kind of know what the area is that they're interested in, so they kind of have what they know is oh, definitely not business and definitely not STEM. So I'm thinking about this, that, and the other. It's oh, well, it looks like social sciences may be more of a fit. So in this case, having a structure like a meta major allows students to start thinking about what are they actually interested in, learning about the different majors in that discipline, and then make an informed decision moving forward. But one thing I want to make sure that I emphasize, and that's why I think I'm happy that there are folks from different offices on eCampus today in this workshop, and we're going to work together with a lot of different offices. Is that this, when we talk about purpose first, when we talk about career and major selection, should not just be a one office responsibility. This should not be a career services, all of it is on the career services. Well, if they have, that's on them. We're talking about career, it's only career services that need to be tied into this. It has to be a whole culture. It has to be throughout the institution that talks about this. Some of the comments, and we're going to talk about that in a second, some of the comments all faculty members should emphasize what the learning are in each of the courses, not simply learning outcomes on the syllabus, make it clear. Nobody reads the outcome, the learning outcomes. Barely few people, read the syllabus anyway. So let's talk about what you're learning in class, how it's actually going to apply to you moving on. So I would say that when you talk about purpose first, everyone on this list, and then some, and I would include students as well, need to be actually engaged and participate in that process at your institution. So let's start having those conversations. When we're talking about the first career discussion, how do we make sure that everyone on campus knows what is going on, when that conversation is taking place? Make sure that they know what is being said about the different majors and the different careers. To make sure that, in some cases, can faculty actually play a role in sharing what the major is about? And I'll talk about that in a second as well. So CCA, by the way, we work with a bunch of other organizations to came up, with this shared beliefs around purpose here. So, we work with ACRO, so which is more around like advising and registrars, NACADA advising, NACE and NCDA are more about like, career services and connection to employers, and NASPA with student affairs. And we work together about like, well, why purpose is so important. And something that we really focus on was on the career exploration has to be intentional and has to start early. And that was like, again, across the board, different professionals talking to their representatives and their members about the importance of having that conversation as early as possible to help students make informed decisions, or at least to guide them towards making an informed decision as we're moving. And again, that it has to be build a culture around this. It cannot just be into a silo. I mean, too many information, institutions, operate in silos. Let's make sure that that conversation breaks those silos and actually addresses this moving forward. One thing I want to mention is that it cannot necessarily be a one-size-fits-all messaging. The information should be available to every single student, but in some cases, the conversation may need to be a little bit tailored based on the students. Let's talk about the financial aspect of it. Why do some students actually pick some majors towards the other? Where's the underrepresentation? What happens when the student graduate in terms of the world of work? What is happening in terms of the pay gaps and the wage gaps and promotion gaps and things like that? So those are things that we can start having conversation, maybe not obviously just first semester, but definitely throughout the college experience, having those conversations with the students, one-on-one or in small groups, to make sure that when we talk about equity, that these students are prepared and they have the tools to actually be successful moving forward, but that we also, as an institution, do have those tools and acknowledge that our students' experiences differ and is not a cookie cutter. So some of the best practices, I'm not going to go through all of them, and like I mentioned, in 2 weeks we're really going to talk a little bit more about the admissions and the student orientation, about how to best support this. A couple of things that I want to emphasize a little bit more. One thing is about the, mentioned the institution-wide, the collecting the data. Like I mentioned earlier, like, do we know, or do you know, what is the demographics of your different majors? Do you know how often your students change majors? Do you know what is the retention of the different majors by demographic as well? So looking at the data, how well are your students doing? Let's not rely on anecdotal data. Let's not rely on the eye test. Well, folks seem to be doing okay. Doesn't work. Like, let's make sure that we actually start collecting that data. And I agree that that data is not usually collected. I know, again, I collected the first time about like the data around how often students change majors, because our IR would never ask, to collect that data. Nobody has ever thought about, like, is it important? And it is. When you talk about completion and time to degree, changing a major actually plays a significant factor. So let's start thinking about the data that we can start collecting to actually see, to make a better picture, to get a better picture of what's going on at the institution. A lot of you mentioned the assessments, early, and I definitely would suggest having that, providing students assessments about their interests, about their values, about what they see, and there's so many out there. That's something that next week or so, next few weeks, when we onboard you, when we bring you in onto our learning management system as part of discussion board, I kind of want to have like an opportunity to share, what resources are you using, like what vendors are you using, what is your assessment tool, because there's so many out there. And if you ever been to a conference, according to the vendors, their product is the best on the market. Like everything else is horrible compared to them. Like they offer you everything. Like, I don't care what you say. I want to hear from the person who's actually using it, not the person selling it. So let's start the conversation on our learning management system that's happening pretty soon, to start sharing your experiences on the different assessment tools, which one works, how expensive it is, because not all of them are free, and so on and so forth. One thing I would also ask is start looking, or another best practice that I would probably recommend other than meta majors and experiential learning, which we'll talk more later, is again the active engagement. And I'll share a few pictures that from a website that I particularly care for. But one thing that once students declare a major, not decide, because declare does not equal decide, decided. Once they declare a major, are you actually reaching out to the student to tell them, hey, I see you're interested in this. Let me tell you a little bit more information about that. And that can be done fairly simply, a one-pager. Do you have a one-pager about the information around a major, about why students should be excited about this, what they're going to learn, what they're going to do, what are potential careers? A simple one-pager that is being sent to all students who declared this during their admissions process. And it could be something like, the Netflix, like, you say you're interested in accounting. You may be interested also in economics and finance. So providing them with information that already gets them start thinking and start exploring as early as possible. And again, that can be done fairly simply with, you already have that data, where the students are applying, what their majors are. So connecting to the student and then following up maybe a couple of weeks later from career services, somebody else, to say, hey, do you have any questions about that major? Or do you have any questions about the careers associated with that major? Or are you thinking about the major or changing majors? So starting that conversation as early as possible. So low touch, easy ways to start that conversation with the student. Another way that I would recommend, and it's fairly simple, at least depending on how many majors, that may not be as simple, but having quick 1 minute, a minute and a half videos from faculty members explaining why students should be excited about that major. So, and it doesn't have to be like super well produced, Steven Spielberg. Use a phone. Phones now have great cameras. You don't need to, if the PR folks want to be involved, even better. But, recruit one faculty member by department and just have like a one-take shot. We're not talking about a lot of editing. One-take shot. Why should students be excited about pursuing a major in your department? What are they going to learn? Go, a minute, minute and a half. Simple. Or just ask students to answer like, why did you pick that major? The students want to know what other majors, what other students are doing. So bring the student experience in here. So having short 1 minute, a minute and a half videos are easy to produce. The only editing really you have to do is maybe put their names, at the bottom of the video, or maybe if you want to be fancy, like at the front, you have the beginning of, University of Louisville, English department, and then it cuts to whatever it is. So it doesn't have to be super well produced. Students want to know quick, and then compile all those videos into an easy to find website on your page that students can navigate. It's like, oh, I never heard of that video, of that major. Let me learn a little bit more about that. So start and redirect them to that point, to that website. So again, that's something that can be easily done. It's a conversation. You hear from students, you hear from faculty, and then you have reaching out after that. You follow up after those videos are made available to students. So again, the information and making informed decisions, why I think it's so important for us is better understanding of career connections to major. One thing I think that we need to know is that sometimes we need to dispel some myths that, like, if you're interested in law, for example, there are a lot of the ways that you actually can get there. But on the other side, like, what can you do if you're a philosophy major? So talking about the connections, what are you learning as early as possible? Having informed decisions helps students get into their majors and start taking relevant classes early on. And that's where I think, again, the meta major structure helps them taking classes that account towards their major, whatever their majors are, in the gen ed course. You can start introducing them to, intro to courses as early as possible for them to get a taste as early as possible and confirm their choices, or in some cases say, that is not at all what I thought. Let's go back to your drawing board and let's go through more assessments and have more discussions about this, and increase major stability. And by providing them informed decisions, it does reduce, opportunity gaps for our students. One thing I want to talk about very quickly as Houston Community College. So we're talking about the undeclared, population. What they've done is every time a student selects undeclared, they have a connection. So they have a career coach that connects them. So one-on-one as to, let's talk about this. What are you interested in? And they start having a conversation and provide the information around the different majors and different careers that actually align with the student's interest and value. So, there's a direct correlation. Are you undeclared? Yes, I'm going to reach out to you. So there's already a contact right there and then with someone, not to shame them, but to make sure that, at a community college, you don't have a whole lot of time to start exploring and things like that. Let me start having a conversation and providing the information, early on. So one-on-one. And as you see, the decrease in undeclared majors, and I'll talk a little bit more about Houston Community College, happened. So a significant decrease in undeclared major simply by having that one-on-one conversation with the student. EAB, whether you have EAB or not, one thing that they do is through Navigate, or one portion of Navigate, they look at, they provide the students with more information around their majors that they selected. So just I was talking about the one pager, EAB does that inside that and provides the other majors that are, that fit in the same category. And what we see and what they saw is that their data is like over a quarter of the students changed majors right there and then before registering. So talk about like less time to degree. Right now they actually are making a decision like, I thought I was going to be in accounting. I saw what finance does. That's something that actually really interests me and a little bit more better aligned to my values. So early providing that information early on. And the same thing with, Baker College, by incorporating labor market data early, we saw that, there's significant decrease in terms of how many students, the percentage of students who actually change majors within their experience. Colorado State University, it's not here, but what they do is they provide career assessment tools and career interest on their website to all of their interested students, like prospective students. So you don't have to log in, you don't have to apply to get access to this. They provide the information to everyone. If you're interested in Colorado State, you can go to their website and take that assessment. And what we've seen is that enrollment has increased by 18%. So if you're worried about, summer melt, providing that information early on actually helps, students, the summer melt and enrollment, because now again, students know, why am I taking these classes? Why am I actually coming to college? Now I know what my major is, what are my potential careers, are going to be. So now I know my why. I know why I'm actually in college. I know what I'm going to do and how this institution is actually going to help me. And if you've been to Arizona State, you may have seen that there are a lot of things that they do really fun. Very quickly, College of Southern Nevada, what they've done is actually create a policy. They actually implemented a policy where students have to go through a meta major and provide, before they actually identify a major, they have to go through a meta major process and talk to an academic advisor before they do so. So there's a lot of information around this. They also change their proactive advising model, where they have regular check-ins that include career assessment and career discussions within academic advising. So there's a good partnership with the academic advising and career resources as well. All right, Houston Community College also changed their entire onboarding process. So I talked about the coaching, the career coach that reach out to their undeclared students. Well, they also include career assessment during the application process and within the student orientation. They also have resources, online career tool that is made into the advising and the enrollment process as well. And it is experiential learning is integrated into the curriculum. It's also embedded into their first year experience course, which is required of all students coming into the institution. So, and within the FYE, there are assignments and activities that lead them to actually take, stock as to what are their interests, what are their values, what are they looking to do moving forward in that aspect of it. They also are expected to participate in career fairs and service learning that actually provide them a little bit more information also about the potential careers that they're interested in. So I'm going to go through really quickly because I realize that I'm talking too much, and I realize that I did not, we're close to our time. University of Delaware, if you haven't been to that website, I actually love that website. It's 2 clicks from their main website. So if you go, udel.edu, 2 clicks, you're able to find that information. And it is their alumni information. So it's not, random information. It is from their alumni. You can select what year, what's the degree, what college, and what major. And you see, what are they doing? Are they employed? And so in what field? Are they continuing in education? What are their career outcomes, their salaries, employers, jobs, and if they pursuing an education, what other institution are they actually, attending? And that to me as a student, again, that helps me. Like, I am not a trailblazer. Other students have gone through this degree, they have been successful, and they actually are employed in doing something that I can actually, see myself in. So here's information. One thing I don't know about University of Delaware is like, how are they actually engaging the student with that information? I'm hoping that with the recruitment during the admissions process, they actually, or even during orientation, they actually bring this up and have the students play around with that website and actually see what's being on there. So I encourage you to, look at that website, see if that's something that could be replicated. If you have great connections with your alumni association, if you already are collecting some of that data in terms of, employment and things like that, how about providing some of that experience back to the incoming students to show that, graduates of your institutions are actually being successful in their fields, or in what field are they actually, successful. Georgia State also, where we're talking about the faculty members and talking about the connection and what they're actually learning. What they've done is something very simple. This is a website that is available for faculty members, and they're using the competencies and the skills highlighted by NACE. So again, National Association of Career and Employers, and faculty members can literally drag and drop what are the skills applied in their courses. So you can select which competencies are being taught in your class. The skills are popping up, and you can literally analyze visual data. You would drag and drop into the applied, and then there's a way of actually exporting that into your syllabus. So instead of learning outcomes that are very wordy, academic, that again, not always very student friendly, when you talk about the skills, that's something that I want to encourage, faculty members to have that discussion early on. This is what you're going to do in this class. This is what you're going to learn, and this is how it's actually going to apply to you in other fields and in other courses that you're going to take moving forward. And those are not necessarily, lofty and very narrow. When we talk about analyze visual data or, create and implement action plans, that's pretty lofty, but that's something that as a student, if you start talking about them, they're able to articulate what are the skills and competencies that they learn in your class, and actually can talk to employers as to like, this is what I've done in my class. This is what I've learned. This is the skills that I've mastered in this. Because of time, we're going to move past. But one thing very quickly, some of you mentioned, especially with the recruitment with K-12, the discussion as early, like how often are you talking to career counselors at your local high schools? Do they know what classes, what are your majors? What do they mean? Are you sharing all the information? Like if you have something on your website, do career counselors at your high schools know where it is? Do you have a conversation around AP and IB and what are the regular classes, that they are offering? and how does it connect? Making sure that the AP courses that they take in high schools are actually counting towards their majors if they're interested in STEM, in social sciences, in business, and things like that. So making sure that the students are not wasting their time and wasting their money by going through an AP credit or AP course. They take the exam, they're happy that you got a 3 or a 4, and they come to you and they go like, sorry, that doesn't count that major. They just wasted their time. So let's make sure that we actually have that conversation and clear communication as early and as often as possible. And for college work, let's talk a little bit more about that later on. I kind of wish we had 2 hours. Sorry about that. But one thing I'm going to ask you to do, this is a very easy representation, I guess, when we're talking about what does it mean, for Purpose First. So having the recruitment, career assessment early onto the application process, where basically it continues on. And what you don't see is that I want to make sure that you understand when we're talking about Purpose First and a conversation around careers and majors, it doesn't end after the first year. Like when a student starts their second year, they have different needs and they need to have different information that's provided to them about what's coming up as you're about to embark into major classes and things like that. What do you need to know about, potential internships? How do you prepare for that? What are the experiential learning activities that you need to start thinking about? Or what are the, student organizations that you need to, potentially join or look into that actually would help you move forward for this? So every year, the conversation with academic advising, with career services need to continue on. So it's not just, when we're talking about Purpose First, it is not just an onboarding aspect. You got a decision, great, I'm off, and then, good luck to you, I'll see you in 4 years or in 2 years. We need to continue to have that conversation with the student to make sure that the conversation, the information is, continues to be relevant associated with their majors and potential careers. So here's one thing that I want to do here before the next step. So in 2 weeks, like I said, we're going to have a conversation around admissions and new student orientation. But based on the different conversations that you had with your institutional teams and things like that, I want you to start thinking about what are 2 things that you need to start doing and need to start working on right now before upcoming orientation and before the next onboarding aspect for your students. And I know that admissions already started. For fall, orientation is probably going to start fairly soon, or at least a lot sooner than we like to think. So what are things, how can you actually start thinking, or what are the things that you need to improve to start engaging students with the conversation? So that too is going to be in the learning management system. So we're going to follow up with that in our LMS that's going to happen in the next week or so about this. So start thinking about that. I wish we had time to break down again in small groups and for you to have that conversation amongst institutional team. But if you can, between now and 2 weeks, the next workshop, start thinking about let's look at your process. Let's talk about your onboarding process by bringing the admissions and the orientation and academic advising and career services, and start looking when are we actually having those conversations? What are the actual what information are we actually providing and engaging with the students? What else do we need to provide to our students to make sure that they make informed decisions on that aspect? So I'll follow up with that. That is your homework. I'll tell you right now, every workshop, there's going to be a homework. So, we're in school, so we need to get used to this. It's very easy for us to give homework to others. Let's make sure that, we preach, we do what we preach as well. So 2 things that you need to start working on for your onboarding to best support your students making informed decisions. So I'll follow up with an email and in the LMS for you to provide us with that. All right. So until then, if you have any questions, I'll stay on for a little bit longer for this meeting if you have any questions. By the way, I love the chat. I didn't have an opportunity to go through all of this. I apologize. I'm talking. So I'll go through, stay on and read your comments, and I appreciate that. But if you don't have any more questions, feel free to log off Have a great weekend. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, look for my email for presentations and things like that. So thank you. And like I said, I'll say if you have any questions, comments, you want to talk, happy to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicholas Marjorie at Kentucky State University, is your presentation available on the website or somewhere for us to log into and review on, or maybe even
Yeah,
share with our professionals?
Yeah, so we'll upload this to, well, I'll send you the link probably early next week, but also upload it into our learning management system. So all the different workshops, the presentation will be there, different resources will be there. So it's going to be our repository of resources that you all will have access to, and you can log in and access whenever. That's where I'll talk about the discussion boards as well, all of that. So that's coming fairly shortly, but next week you should get an email with the presentation and the recording and the presentation.
Thank you so much. This was very informative. Have a great day.
Thank you, you too.
Hey, Lily.
Hey, Chris. Your name has come up in a couple conversations, and I was like, did he go to Vanderbilt? Did he work at Vanderbilt? Because I don't know any other Chris Krebs. But anyway, then I saw your picture. I was like, there's some more gray in that beard. I don't know.
It happened when I got to Kentucky. I had a full black beard. Maybe I need to use some shoe polish to hide this.
No, it's so good to see you. How long have you been in Kentucky?
I've been here since 2015.
Really?
Yeah.